Greetings, adventurers, and welcome back to the Den of the Drake. Other dragons hoard gold, while I hoard internet cringe. Alright everyone, don't panic. We're trying something new today. Repeat, the Den of the Drake has breached containment. Everyone stay calm, the cartoon dragon is doing lore. Now I could have started with anything for my first episode of Dragon's Guide, but I figured that I'm a literal infant still covered in the viscous aftermath of my violent birth into the lore tuber space. So I should start with a topic that I'm utterly obsessed with. Myself. That's right, we're talking about D&D's most cunning, greedy, and unapologetically evil flying dinosaurs who rock the color scheme of a Forgotten Realms pride flag. The Chromatic Dragons.
That's a whole lot of dragon.
All chromatic dragons have a few things in common besides being giant flying reptiles. The first is that they are all evil as hell itself. Some even more so. Sure, every once in a while, a chromatic dragon will become the rider's pet and get corrupted by the forces of good, but for the most part, if a giant lizard looks like it climbed out of a Crayola box, you're in for a bad time. The second is their insatiable greed that would make even the most corrupt billionaire look like Karl Marx. Chromatic dragons believe that they are entitled to all of the world's wealth, and that anyone who's ever even held a copper piece was just keeping it warm until it could find its way into the dragon's hoard. Anything of value, gemstones, artwork, magic items, and yes, gold, are all fair game to a chromatic dragon. Cringe hasn't caught on quite yet, but give it time. But the most notable similarity of the chromatic dragons is that they are by far the most iconic of all RPG enemies. I mean, hell, chromatic dragons have been in the game since Gary Gygax dreamed up my favorite hobby all the way back in 1974. They are in the title. What, do you think I'm one of those perverts who plays D&D for the dungeons? Best you're getting from me is your scheduled 2 minutes of missionary before my 9 p.m. bedtime. Rule number 1 as an entertainer is to always leave your audience wanting more. Unlike my failing sex life, chromatic dragons come in way more flavors than just vanilla. You also got blueberry, lime, charcoal, and cinnamon. Or as the normies like to call them, white, blue, green, black, and red. In no particular order, we're gonna cover each dragon's appearance, abilities, personalities, and how they each make the world a worse place in their own unique way. And because I'm an opinionated bastard, I'll go ahead and share what I think about each member of this Crayola box of nightmares, and some ideas about how you as a DM can incorporate each of these 5 types of flavored crack gator into your D&D campaign. Now, without any further delay, let's go ahead and dive right into the first episode of A Dragon's Guide. Enjoy.
What killed the dinosaurs? The Ice Age!
Ha! Checkmate, Arnold. This dinosaur is the Ice Age. Appearance and abilities. White dragons are the smallest, least intelligent, and overall weakest of the chromatic dragons, but that's not saying much because, you know, it's still a fucking dragon. That's like you being an antelope saying the leopard is the weakest big cat in Africa. Asking the question, who's the strongest, is more of a concern for the cats themselves. Because either way, you're still getting choked out and drug up a tree. And a white dragon can eat any adventurer like a still frozen Tyson chicken nugget because they're freaks like that. White dragons can be identified by their white coloration, but they can also appear in shades of gray and ice blue. Just don't eat the yellow ones. White dragons are completely unbothered by cold conditions and can move and climb on slippery surfaces that would make your adventurer break their pelvis doing an involuntary split. In addition, they are also exceptional swimmers like most dragons, but they prefer dips in water that makes a Joe Rogan ice bath look like a hot tub. But enough of that moving on rough terrain crap. You want to hear about what makes dragons some of the most deadly monsters to roll dice against. The breath weapon. And white dragons pack a nasty one. Imagine an 80-foot fire extinguisher filled with liquid nitrogen with the temperament of a teenager named Kyle who just had his Xbox taken away. And you'll have a pretty good idea of the destruction a white dragon is capable of. White dragons exhale a cone of cold from their mouths that's capable of freezing even the air around it. You'll be inflicted with extreme cold burns if you're lucky, but if you're caught in the full force of the blast, well, that's not really your problem anymore, because your priorities change when your internal body temperature reaches below 0 temperatures. This breath weapon has uses outside of combat as well. White dragons can sculpt their layers freely with their breath, so creative DMs can come up with some sick places for your adventurers to die inside of. White dragons can use their breath to set traps, craft armor made from ice, or even create works of frozen artwork to decorate their cozy little slices of hell. Oh, speaking of being a little slice of hell, personality. It's well known among the scholars that white dragons are the most common and animalistic of the true dragons, caring a lot more about where their next meal is going to come from instead of the politics of lesser creatures and other dragons. But even though they are unequivocally the weakest, they still are chromatic dragons, which means that they think that they specifically are the pinnacle of creation. And are you gonna disagree with the 100,000-pound flying snow cone machine that eats mammoths? Pissing this thing off is the last thing you want to do. White dragons possess minimal planning or foresight capabilities and are only able to remember physical events, while abstract concepts like love, justice, or the economy tend to fly over their heads. But there's one subject that causes their dusty engine that they call a brain to get thrown into high gear, and that is vengeance. If you do something to upset a white dragon, it will have a brain blast fueled by pure spite, so it can remember the exact date, time, geographic coordinates, and color of Crocs you were wearing when you pissed it off. And you bet your ass that it will be doing everything in its power to make sure that it pays you back tenfold. And when you're talking about a reptilian polar bear the length of an Olympic swimming pool, that is a lot of power, my guy. Mind you, its method of delivering vengeance is not going to end up inspiring the plot of a J.R.R. Martin book. If you've ever seen a Predator missile do its thing, then you get the idea. Straightforward, overkill, and incredibly entertaining to watch if you're not the thing it's pointed at. But unlike a Predator missile, white dragons like to take home bits and pieces of the things that piss them off. After you're frozen solid, the dragon might decide that you are worth hoarding. While most dragons will seek out exclusively things of monetary value for their hoards, white dragons have a particular affinity for taking trophies. If you're not eaten wholesale, the white dragon may end up dragging your frozen corpse back to its hoard to act as the newest ice sculpture in its constantly growing collection of ice sculptures. White dragons still enjoy collecting shiny things like the other dragons, but they vastly prefer treasures that resemble ice, like diamonds, because when you got such limited brain power, you really gotta make sure people pick up on your theme. How white dragons make the world worse. White dragons live solitary lives and are incredibly territorial towards both people and other dragons. They will only interact with other white dragons for the purposes of mating, and even then they do it for the pleasure of it. The whole baby-making part of baby-making is more of a side effect than the point. Unsurprisingly, white dragons are most at home living in cold climates, but they don't actually require polar conditions to survive, with many dragons choosing to settle in alpine forests or at the top of mountain ranges. But once they are established, white dragons are an ecosystem's worst nightmare. These things can't even pronounce the words ecological stability and lack enough empathy to give two shits even if they were capable of doing so. White dragons got no problem eating varied prey. The problem is getting them to f***ing stop.
You dead? Did he eat the last one?
White dragons will kill and kill and kill until an entire ecosystem collapses under the pressure of an unsustainable dragon population. This is the equivalent of a morbidly obese dude pulling up to an all-you-can-eat buffet on a mobility scooter and refusing to go home until every one of the employees is in tears. Once they've completely destroyed anything resembling a sustainable ecosystem, they pack up and begin migrating south in search of new areas where they can violate the Endangered Species Act. This behavior brings them into conflict with other dragons, and more relevant to your D&D campaign, areas populated by sentient races. Once they have driven everything worth eating into an early extinction, they are overcome by a wave of guilt. They take a moment to reflect upon the utter destruction they have wrought and begin planning to adopt a more sustainable you, this is a dragon. Sorry and regret are not in its vocabulary. Once a dragon reaches the point where it's had its fill of indiscriminate murder, it enters a state of torpor which lasts approximately 20 years, just long enough for the ecosystems it destroyed to recover, just so it can kickstart its gluttonous murder bender all over again. My thoughts on how to fit them into your game. I like white dragons. They're the, I want a dragon, but I don't really want to commit kind of dragon. I'm a big zoology nerd, so having a dragon that acts more like an invasive species instead of the Zinchian schemers that other dragons tend to be scratches an itch. You don't gotta explain why a white dragon is doing what it's doing, because odds are the white dragon doesn't know either. My favorite aspect is the idea that every 20 years the polar regions are turned into ecological dead zones, and the entire world's population of white dragons, wormling, adult, or ancient, are all going to be engaging in a migration that borders on an apocalyptic scale. Every 20 years, the entire world's population of white dragons is going to be heading south all at the same time to compete with each other and everything else for food. And you know when that happens, that's going to be everyone's problem. How do populated areas prepare for the migration? Do white dragons always migrate to the same place every year? Who would have something to gain from this 20-year migration, and how would it benefit them? You know, for being the most basic of all dragons, they have a lot of potential to be involved in some interesting stories. But our next dragon is anything but basic. I'm blue, dabba-dee-dabba-die. Appearance and abilities. Blue dragons are like the Persian cat of the dragon world. They are total divas and they got a fucked up face. And I got some opinions on their design, but we'll save that towards the end. Blue dragons can be distinguished from other chromatic dragons by their blue color, giant bat ears, ozone smell, and that goofy looking ice cream cone someone hot glued to their forehead. I mean, look at this Baragon looking motherfucker. That's a face only a mother could love. The blue dragon's breath weapon is the fantasy equivalent of taking a bath with a toaster. Blue dragons ride the lightning! The blue dragon's breath weapon is one of 2 breath weapons that shirk the cone shape. Instead, their breath weapon shoots out in a long-range blast that follows a straight line directly in front of them, leaving any who get caught in it looking like Hassan's dog. In addition to a pretty sweet breath weapon, blue dragons come equipped with the holy grail of movement options for a creative TM, a burrowing speed. Blue dragons use their claws and horns to dig elaborate subterranean tunnel systems beneath desert sands to act as their lair. Now, I'm sure you've seen what happens to sand when it's struck by lightning, and if not, look up what a fulgurite is and you'll already be coming up with ways to design your blue dragon's lair. Underground crystal caverns will never not be cool. In addition to their gnarly breath weapon and burrowing capabilities, blue dragons can be proficient spellcasters because they're kinda smart. Because of their tendency towards intrigue, they like to specialize in illusory magic especially, making their lairs extra treacherous for any trespassers who thought that the underground dragon lair would be an easy hike. Blue dragons are also more than capable of disguising themselves. So if the neighboring kingdom's monarch really has a thing for taxing the population and keeps a giant pile of gold in the middle of town square, you might have a reason to be suspicious. Or an excuse to overthrow the government, and who doesn't love one of those? Personality. Blue dragons are tied with the red dragon for the title of second smartest of all the chromatics. But like all certified midwits, blue dragons insist that they have the biggest brains God ever put into a reptile. Blue dragons don't just desire to be superior, they need everyone else to know how superior they are. Blue dragons have colossal egos among a group of monsters known for their egos. It's not enough for a blue dragon to win, they need you to lose. In fact, any insinuation that they specifically are not the best at literally everything will be met with extreme prejudice. And by prejudice, I of course mean violence. These dragons live in a society. No, seriously. Blue dragons value dominance over all else and take enormous amounts of pleasure bossing around other creatures that they believe to be inferior to themselves. Which, since this is a dragon, is everyone. Blue dragons have a habit of placing themselves in positions where they have the access to the best of the best when it comes to minions. Blue dragons can often be found at the centers of convoluted and ever-expanding webs of minions and servants, each with unique talents that serve the dragon's nefarious purposes. In addition to your typical kobolds and desert-dwelling nasties like Ankegs and giant scorpions, blues also employ individuals like bards, sages, wizards, assassins, and gaming coaches to help them win competitive League of Legends games. Pretty much anyone with a niche skill can be useful to a blue dragon. Notice how I said employ and not enslave. Funnily enough, the blue dragon's need to show dominance makes it a lot more amicable than most of the other chromatic dragons. But don't get confused, because this is not a healthy work environment. It's still a dragon. There's no HR when you work for a dragon, and any attempt to unionize will be met with a merciless death. But blue dragons are known to reward their minions handsomely whenever they help to advance the dragon's schemes, and punish them severely when they fail. But with the job market being what it is today, I'll take what I can get. These webs of servitude can expand to such scales that most of the minions don't even know that they're working for a blue dragon, or that they even are a minion. Your shitty 9-to-5 could be shitty because you could be working for a blue dragon right now and you wouldn't even know it. How blue dragons make the world worse. Directly opposing the white dragon, blue dragons prefer to make their homes in arid desert environments, particularly those where storms are common. Like other dragons, they are territorial, but it's less of an animal instinct to control access to food and resources, and more like getting in a property dispute with your neighbor. Blue dragons draw lines around their territory that they enforce with an iron claw, but as long as you stay on your side of the invisible line, you're good. In fact, blue dragons can make for passable neighbors with human settlements as long as their needs are met. But that does not mean that you want to encounter a blue dragon HOA anytime soon. The lawful in their alignment does not cancel out the evil, because this is the dragon equivalent of BlackRock. Just because they're not conquering your kingdom right now does not mean they aren't planning how to do it through mountains of red tape just to show how smart they are. My thoughts on how to fit them in your game. Now you might have picked up on this, but I'm not the biggest fan of the blue dragon's design. When you look at the other dragons, their designs match their personalities. White dragons look feral, green dragons look like slithery serpents, black dragons look like ghouls powered by pure seething hatred. What about the blue dragon's design signals mastermind? I look at this thing and all I can think of is that its face made love to a garbage disposal. I talk a lot of smack about D&D 2024, but credit where credit is due, the new dragons are f***ing phenomenal. In fact, here's a hot take for you. The dragons from 2024 are my favorite dragon designs ever. Period. And that is an exceptionally high bar. But the new black dragon alone shoots that bar into the stratosphere. The blue dragon is still the weakest aesthetically for me, but it's still miles above whatever the hell 5th edition was peddling. But even though blue dragons are my least favorite looking of all the dragons, they are still one of my favorites overall because I love their flavor that much. While they aren't the best schemers out of all the dragons, we'll get to them shortly, the blue dragon is interesting because if you're a sociopathic narcissist with a burning desire to tell inferior peasants how to live their lives, what do? You get into politics. It's not enough for a blue dragon to pretend to be a king's sketchy advisor and sow slow corruption. The blue dragon wants to sit his own scaly ass in that chair and be the one giving orders. The temptation to not make every single evil monarch in my setting a secret blue dragon claws at my brain every time I sit down to write a big, bad evil guy. The potential for storytelling with these guys is almost unmatched. Plus, their affinity for hiring niche minions with special talents makes them excellent quest givers. A campaign where the party are all minions working for a blue dragon has a lot of potential. And if you're one of my players watching this video and you just heard me say that, no you didn't. I like my dragons how I like my coffee. Brewed with spite and strong enough to kill me. Appearance and abilities. The black dragon is the closest that the chromatic dragons get to creating an animal half as toxic as the Dead by Daylight community. Black dragons are by far the most evil and cruel of the chromatic dragons, and that's some stiff competition. Aesthetically, they're just really fucking cool, especially the 2024 version. This thing looks like it's evil distilled into reptilian form, and that's because it is. Black dragons can be distinguished by their slender, almost skeletal build, complete with a skull-like face framed by 2 forward-curving horns that make it look like a metalhead's wet dream. And much like the less desirable side of the metal community, they reek of stagnant pond water and taint the very environment around them with their crappy attitude. Black dragons are so nasty that they corrupt the world around them to match their nastiness. If a previously happy meadow starts growing sludge monsters and gardens of plants that eat puppies, complete with a fog that whispers slurs that you would only ever hear in a Modern Warfare 2 lobby, it might be time to call your local adventurers guild to tell them that there's a dragon that needs a good stabbing. The black dragon's breath weapon is a lot like them, meant to be a fucking problem. The black dragon is the second kind of dragon that adopts a line-shaped blast instead of the traditional cone. But unlike the blue dragon, they took a page from the culture of the 60s and went all in on doing acid. The acid from a black dragon's breath weapon is one of the most corrosive substances known in the world of D&D, capable of dissolving pretty much anything it touches into piles of hissing sludge. But just because it's powerful and effective doesn't mean that your death by black dragon is going to be quick and painless. The black dragon takes a perverse satisfaction in watching their prey slowly dissolve into a form that can be sucked up with a straw. If you're expecting a merciful death from a dude who looks like this, you should work on being a better judge of character before you become an adventurer. Personality. Black dragons are dicks. Like huge dicks. Sure, that's not a mutually exclusive trait among chromatic dragons, but black dragons take it to another level. Black dragons are cruelty and sadism incarnate. They are similar to white dragons in that they don't need a reason. But the difference is that the white dragon has the excuse of being barely above an animal, while the black dragon, again, is a dick. Black dragons will not tolerate seeing the weak prosper in any way, shape, or form. They will interpret any attempt to rise above your place in the totem pole by doing things like growing food, developing culture, or experiencing joy as a personal insult. Now that may sound a lot like the blue dragon, but that's only surface level. The blue dragon wants to dominate its inferiors. The black dragon wants to destroy them. Blue dragons live in a society, but black dragons, they live in a society. Black dragons are D1 haters, and if there's one thing that they hate more than the weak, it's things that make themselves feel weak. Like all bullies, the black dragon runs like a little pansy the second that they meet someone that can hit back harder. Of course, the black dragon would never put it that way. It's not running away like a coward, it's a tactical retreat, dumbass. Often this bigger fish comes in the form of other dragons looking to bully the bully off of its territory and treasure hoard. Because of this, black dragons hate other dragons more than anything, often spending resources and sending minions to spy on other dragons so they can strike them at their weakest and avoid them at their strongest. I cannot stress this enough, black dragons are colossal dicks. How black dragons make the world worse. Black dragons will gladly set up shop anywhere where rot and stagnant water are present. Swamps, bogs, jungle marshes, hell, I even saw one living in the dumpster water behind Golden Corral one time. It's true that black dragons prefer to live in environments as toxic as they are, but they also like these environments because that's where their chosen minions live. Black dragons will outsource their hating enterprise to lizard folk and kobolds, two reptilian races of the world who are all too eager to worship the dragon as a god. In the dragon's name, they will raid human settlements and use their plunder of flesh and valuables to build effigies to the dragon to signal their devotion to the beast. If you're driving through a bog like a normal person and start seeing totems that look like dragons made from skulls and human hair, you should probably lock your doors and don't slow down under 25 miles an hour until you're well outside of that part of the neighborhood. Like I alluded to previously, black dragons are capable of corrupting the environments that they inhabit. So if the dragon can't find a fetid swamp toxic enough for its liking, all the dragon needs to do is sit his happy ass down, and soon enough the toxic swamp will come to it. For 6 miles around the dragon's lair, all water is turned into difficult terrain, making approaching the lair a nightmare for any do-gooders looking to cleanse the area of the dragon's evil. Its presence alone corrupts the plant life of the area, spawning beings of pure corruption like blights and shambling mounds, which of course will go out and do some hating of the vegan variety on the dragon's behalf. My thoughts on how to fit them into your game. This is the Horror Dragon. If you want a monster that'll dive to the depths of depravity for no reason other than to mess with the heads of your party, this is your dragon. I'm a huge fan of grimdark stories, and this is the Grimdark Dragon. It's got a skull for a face. It couldn't be more obvious if you wrote, "I'm a bad guy" on its fucking forehead. You know how many adventurers it would take to make a skin suit big enough to fit a fully grown chromatic dragon? It's a lot, trust me. Sure, it's not like the black dragon has the same depth of the blue or even the green, but that's not always needed for a good villain. There's no world where a good aligned party is not going to despise the antics and schemes of a black dragon that's been played to the best of its bastard self. And an effective use of imagery can quickly turn any encounter with a black dragon into a horror film. It's a winged Hannibal Lecter with the ability to shoot sulfuric acid out of its mouth like a super soaker the size of a Boeing. What more could you ask for from a bad guy? But I guess for the people who are like, "Wah, I want some depth in my stories about flying dinosaurs," there is some potential in the black dragon. Black dragons hate other dragons. So that opens the door to the party making an unlikely ally against a much more threatening scaly beast. Wrestling with the moral implication of allying with such a despicable monster for the greater good is always an entertaining plot point. Just make sure you do your duty as a DM and have the dragon betray the party sometime down the line, because I cannot stress this enough, black dragons are enormous dicks.
It's not easy being green.
But damn, it makes doing war crimes easier. Appearance and abilities. Oh, it's a slithery little snack. Green dragons are perfect examples of a design that reflects the monster's personality. One look at their serpentine design is enough to solidify that this guy is up to no good. Greens lack the horns that you would see in other dragons, instead opting for a long fin that starts at the head and runs all the way down the spine. Green dragons range in color, from shades of leafy green all the way to shades that are so dark that they almost look black. Those are the ones who play Dark Angels, which is weird, because if you know anything about green dragons, you already know they all play for Tzeentch. While they lack any innate flashy abilities like having a burrowing speed or being so evil that they corrupt the world around them, green dragons are the smartest of all the Chromatic Dragons, and live and die by the phrase, just as planned. Green dragons have the potential to be the most dangerous type of dragon because of their big-ass brain. Well, I guess how smart they are is dependent on how smart your DM is. So if your DM is a drooling dumbass, then these guys are harmless. But if your DM plays them right, then you can expect every interaction with a green dragon to be wrought with traps of the physical, mental, and emotional variety. Truly, they are the toxic ex-girlfriends of the D&D world. But in the rare case where outsmarting their enemies doesn't work, green dragons have the same backup plan as many of the greatest leaders throughout history. Throwing the Geneva Conventions into the fucking trash and resorting to committing war crimes because green dragons are packing a literal chlorine gas breath weapon. If you're a smartass who thinks they can avoid 22d6 poison damage by holding your breath, good luck. First, the breath weapon is magical, and second, chlorine gas has a tendency to react violently when it comes in contact with water, which is most of your body. So congratulations, your prize for thinking you outsmarted the DM's boss encounter is a magical layer of hydrochloric acid that's now coating your eyes and skin. Green dragons, subjecting whimsical fantasy creatures to the horrors of World War I since 1974. And if that wasn't bad enough, their high intelligence gives them the potential to be the most potent spellcaster out of any of the Chromatic Dragons. So watch your mouth, because you never know when a green dragon might be watching and decides it's time to throw a meteor at the back of your head. Personality. Green dragons are the masterminds that the blue dragons think they are, sporting the largest brain of any Chromatic Dragon. And unlike the blues who scheme to achieve praise from lesser beings and don't really care about the results, green dragons are in it for the love of the game. Green dragons live to slither their ways into the soft and pliable affairs of the mortal races, taking special pleasure in the corruption of anything good. If you were pissed about how Game of Thrones ended, then you can thank a green dragon for that, because I am 99% certain one of those bastards was behind that. Oh, speaking of Game of Thrones, Jon Snow might know nothing, but boy howdy do I know that GamerSupps just dropped a new line that fits the theme of this video, Gamer of Thrones. We got 2 new crew necks, mouse pads, coasters, and a new dope pixel cup. Click the link in the description or use code Drake at checkout for a hefty discount while also supporting the channel. I mean, it's got a dragon on it, what more do you want from me? Alright, enough shilling, back to the dragons. Lies and deceit are to a green dragon what sending inappropriate messages to a minor is to a Discord mod. They literally cannot help themselves. They'll sprinkle in just enough truth to make their lies convincing. But once their real intentions have been revealed, it's often far too late for whatever fool thought making a deal with the love child of Littlefinger and Godzilla was a good idea. While other dragons seek the most direct solution to solving their problems, green dragons tend to take a more subtle approach. They are cunning, treacherous puppet masters who are constantly scheming up ways to enrich themselves through the least effort required. Side note, can I praise the 2024 dragon design again? This image goes so hard. While they are vicious combatants in their own right, green dragons try their best to avoid any confrontations that could result in any harm targeting themselves directly. If they find themselves within a mile of someone wanting to poke holes in their kidneys with the capability to do so, then something has gone very wrong in the dragon's planning process. When facing stronger foes, they will put up a front of diplomacy. But don't be fooled. When they get the upper hand or are dealing with creatures weaker than themselves, they'll show you just how petty and cruel they can really be. How green dragons make the world worse. Green dragons are drawn to heavily forested areas where they take advantage of the resources and races that tend to live in that environment. Green dragons will employ goblinoids, ettercaps, ettins, kobolds, orcs, and yuan-ti. But they take a special amount of enjoyment in the corruption and enslavement of elves, which is incredibly based. While not necessarily as territorial as other Chromatic Dragons, they are certainly vindictive. When faced with confrontation from another dragon, the green dragon's first instinct is to back down and flee. But don't get it twisted, this is not surrender. The green dragon will then bide its time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike like a coiled snake in the grass. They will wait decades until they catch the invading dragon in a moment of weakness, where it will then reclaim its lost territory and add its defeated rival's treasure hoard to its own. Speaking of hoards, Green Dragon's attitudes towards hoarding treasure is different than other Chromatic Dragons. While yes, absolutely, Green Dragons like to sit on absurdly large piles of wealth, but they do it for different reasons. Green Dragons value power over all else, and it just so happens that under the rules of capitalism, those who are sitting on the biggest piles of money have the most power. To put it plainly, to a green dragon, money is less about the wealth and more about keeping score. Another quirk about the green dragon horde is their tendency to hoard people. Now, this goes beyond just typical evil dragon enslavement. The dragon's favorite pieces of treasure are actually the sentient beings that they've corrupted into their service, with a special emphasis put on their fame and personalities when it comes to determining just how valuable they are. Famous artists, adventurers, scholars, overall eccentric individuals are common to find amongst the horde of a green dragon. You could be exploring a green dragon's lair and just find Hannah Montana buried under a pile of coins. My thoughts on how they fit into your game. Green dragons are my favorite overall type of dragon to run in any RPG. In addition to having a kick-ass design that 2024 nailed, they are everything we love about intelligent dragons, while still having the whole "I am fire, I am death" thing going for them. Well, except the fire part. They just gotta settle for the World War I fart breath. Don't get me wrong, I like blue dragons for many of the reasons that I like green dragons, but green dragons are the perfect puppet master villain. Example: while the blue dragon thinks that he's the ultimate ruler of the realm because he's become the dictator of some backwater kingdom, the green dragon's been running the banks and has been slowly undermining the blue dragon's new tax policy by tanking the value of the silver coin and approving high-risk home loans in order to crash the economy, all because the Blue Dragon didn't invite him to his birthday party 700 years ago. For those of you who have read the First Law series by Joe Abercrombie, Green Dragons are the bias of your setting. If you haven't read the First Law, go read it, and then go put more green dragons in your games, because the possibilities are literally endless. Finally, we come to the most iconic of the most iconic D&D monsters. When people think Dungeons and Dragons, they think of this bad boy. What, you think people imagine beholders when D&D gets brought up? Get the hell out of here! Those demented meatballs can't hold a candle to the perfection that is the red dragon. No, I'm not biased because I'm a red dragon, you're just jealous. Appearance and abilities. In addition to being the most iconic of all the Chromatic Dragons, they are also the largest and most powerful of their brethren, only being bested in size and power by the Gold Dragons, and no, King Ghidorah does not count. If you don't know what a red dragon looks like, well, I would like to congratulate you on being one of the few blind Den of the Drake fans. You're an inspiration to us all. I would also like to ask how you even clicked on this video, but for the sake of the visually impaired and because the traditional D&D design does deviate slightly from my own divine form, we'll go over it. Because of their affinity for fire, they reek of smoke and carry a pungent smell of sulfur, cursing them to a life of smelling like a protein fart. Their heads are framed by two ear-like fins and a pair of long backward curving horns, giving them an almost devilish appearance that's only enhanced by their hard-as-iron scales, which come in shades ranging from a bad sunburn to burnt hot dog. Adding on to their frightening stature is the largest wingspan of any known dragon in the D&D mythos, which allows them to cast a shadow of dread over anything smart enough to feel fear when in the presence of the beast. And being afraid of a red dragon is a very smart instinct to have, because red dragons are the proud owners of one of the most powerful breath weapons of any dragon. Red dragons can expel a cone of flame so devastating it can melt solid iron. For scale, napalm burns at an average temperature of 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, the melting point of iron is 2800 degrees Fahrenheit. If you think that a plucky adventurer is gonna come out the other end of a breath 1,000 degrees hotter than napalm as anything other than a pile of ash without some serious help, well, I got a new crypto coin I want to sell you. If that weren't bad enough, red dragons share the title of second most intelligent chromatic dragon alongside the blue dragon, which means that they are more than capable of becoming proficient spellcasters if they want to be. In some editions, red dragons just popped out of the egg knowing how to sling spells better than Gandalf. Because if your sorcerer can gain access to magic because their grandpappy banged a dragon, well, then it only makes sense that the dragon itself can do the same. Not as frightening but equally impressive is their innate ability to appraise the value of any object. Wave an artifact in a red dragon's face and they'll be able to tell you what it's worth down to the last copper piece, before promptly taking it from you because it's a dragon. But don't expect them to be honest to you about the value. They're also masterful liars. It's like a more whimsical version of Pawn Stars that'll lie to you more than the History Channel already does. Personality. Red dragons are the personification of greed itself. In the mind of a red dragon, material wealth is more valuable than anything else. If something exists that's worth more than a copper piece, the dragon wants it just so you can't have it. This is the Jeff Bezos of dragons. Like all dragons, they are incredibly vain, but the reds turn that vanity up to 11. Can't relate. I am incredibly humble despite being born as a superior being. Speaking of being a superior being, not only are red dragons vain, but they are hella racist, seeing themselves as the pinnacle of creation, far above even the likes of other dragons who they view as innately inferior. While the other chromatic dragons plot against each other and see each other as rivals, red dragons could not give less of a solitary fuck what other dragons think about them, caring only for their status among other reds. But like all those who desperately want to appear nonchalant, the real problem is that they care too much. Red dragons have a swift and fiery temper to fit the whole being a living volcano thing. Their tendency to fly off the handle stems from the unflattering reality that their pride is actually pretty fragile. In the eyes of a red dragon, any loss or defeat will result in a loss of status amongst their kin, and must swiftly be avenged against those who wronged them. But if the perpetrator can't be found or is out of the dragon's reach, they will turn their wrath on whatever is closest. Because there's no problem that a multi-week-long bender filled with indiscriminate blood, death, and plundering can't put right. Red dragons put the chaotic in chaotic evil. They hate any authority that isn't their own. Stop me if you heard that one before. In fact, this compulsive need to disrespect their surroundings is so bad that they would literally rather die than ask for help from another dragon, as doing so would be admitting weakness, which would indirectly place them under that dragon's authority in their own minds. See, that's why I refuse to go to therapy. I'm too alpha. How red dragons make the world worse. Red dragons are most likely to build their lairs among mountainous terrain, but they'll pretty much settle for anywhere they can look down on everyone else, as God intended. Now, red dragons may view every other living creature as an inferior waste of flesh when compared to itself, and this is because they're right. But that doesn't stop them from utilizing minions and slaves to solve the rare problem that being a 100-foot living flamethrower can't solve. Isn't that right, Larry?
Okay, you know what? Screw you. You can balance your own checkbook. I did not get a degree in personal finance for this bullshit.
I love that guy. Once a red dragon has settled an area, it's over. You, your dog, and your copy of the Young Sheldon anthology are now the property of the Red Dragon until further notice. And considering how dragons live for thousands of years, further notice may take a while. Red dragons are territorial to an extent that even other chromatics would find extreme. Making the mistake of entering Big Red's territory without its consent is not a mistake that you'll get to make twice. Especially if you're another dragon, and especially if your scales are also red. This hyper-possessive nature will sometimes lead to the dragon adopting a protective yet patronizing manner towards the few inferior creatures living within their territory that they've chosen not to brutally slaughter. Alright, back it up, buddy. Extinguish that ember of hope that there might be a shred of compassion in me or any other red dragon. Red dragons rule as brutal tyrants, but unlike the blue dragon, it's less, "Ha-ha! After years of planning, I have finally usurped the king, and they have no idea." And it's more like, "Hello, medieval city mostly constructed from flammable materials. I'm a hell dinosaur with the ability to open my mouth and summon the strength of a miniature sun. You pay me." The dragon views you and your city as an extension of its horde. Tributes, worship, and regular sacrifices of succulent young maidens are gonna be your new norm if you don't want to be turned into fertilizer the next time the dragon has a bad day. Red dragons live for only two things: to boost their bank account and to boost their street cred. To do this, red dragons go out of their way to make powerful enemies with the expectation that their eventual defeat will rain all sorts of wealth and status down upon the dragon. So if you're a semi-famous adventuring party that's got more than a few gold pieces to their name, watch out. I'm coming for your lunch money. My thoughts and how to fit them into your game. What's there to say? There's a reason why I chose a red dragon to represent this channel. No, it's not because they're the most popular and I can parasitize the brand recognition in the YouTube algorithm. Shut up, shut up, shut up! Not only is the red dragon the most iconic D&D monster, it's probably the most iconic monster in our entire culture, and there's something to be said about that. As for fitting the red dragon into your game, well, it's kind of a jack of all trades. Actually, scratch that. It's the king. It's got the ferocity of the white, the ego of the blue, the cruelty of the black, and the intrigue of the green, while still being able to establish its own unique identity. This is the nuclear-powered Swiss Army knife of RPG bad guys, and will comfortably fit in any role that you as a DM want to put it in. But fair warning, you're gonna want to be cautious about how you implement it. More so than any other monster, the red dragon has a certain air about it that's gonna grab your player's attention more so than even monsters like the Tarrasque or Vecna can do. This is a double-edged sword. On one hand, your players are immediately going to be locked in because it's the dragon. Literal decades of enjoying fantasy media has been preparing them for this moment. If you use the official DM screen, your players have been staring at one for literally the entire time they've been playing. They've had the image of this moment in their mind ever since they heard the words Dungeons and Dragons for the first time. There's this expectation of a cunning, merciless, and jaw-droppingly powerful enemy that only the most capable of warriors have a chance of even surviving, never mind defeating. Which is ironic, because the red dragon is actually far from the strongest monster in this game. But what the red dragon does have is unmatched aura. But while its aura is as massive as its ego, it's also just as fragile. If the red dragon turns out to be a paper tiger, or even worse, is treated like any other enemy without any real hype or fanfare, that's gonna be disappointing to say the least. D&D has been around since the 1970s, and half a century of hype for this thing has set a pretty high standard that can feel kind of unrealistic to a lot of DMs. It's a super easy trap to fall into to psych yourself out because you're afraid that you're not going to stick the landing when trying to pull off the big red. My advice: a red dragon should not be treated like an encounter. It's an event. If you're going to run a red dragon, you owe it to yourself and your players to go all in. Because if there's any monster in D&D that deserves it, it's this one. No matter what your needs for a bad guy is, there's a dragon for that. Maybe you wanna, there's a big scary monster, go beat it with a stick until it dies kind of adventure. Or maybe you wanna explore the depths of depravity and moral ambiguity that a political game lends itself to. Or maybe you just really wanna kill the bard. No matter what kind of game you're running or schemes you have cooking up behind your DM screen, there's nothing that can't be improved on with the addition of a big bad evil dragon. A BBED, if you will. No monster screams fantasy more than the dragon. And hell, I would argue that no monster is more culturally relevant than one either. Slaying the dragon has and always will be symbolic of overcoming the adversities that life throws at us. So much so that any D&D campaign that lacks a dragon almost feels naked without one. So do yourself, your players, and me a favor. Run more Chromatic Dragons in your games. And don't be naked while playing D&D. Unless you're one of those freaks who plays D&D for the dungeons, in that case, you do you. This has been a Dragon's Guide to Dragons. Now, this has been a pretty big departure from my normal content, so let me know what you thought of it down in the comments. Doing new things is always a big risk for YouTubers, especially ones who have been running in the same niche for as long as I have. So if you enjoyed the video, it would mean the world to me if you could like and share this video with your friends and comment what lore topics you'd want me to cover next. Also, YouTube has got this new hype feature now. I have no idea what the hell it does, but click that too. I really enjoyed making this kind of video, and I think I have a knack for it, so it'd be dope if I could make more things like it going forward. D&D, Warhammer, Trench Crusade, Lord of the Rings, I don't know, fucking Malcolm in the Middle. There's a ton of stories out there with characters and monsters that I'd love to explore with you guys, and I look forward to doing so in the future. And on that note, I think that's a good place to wrap up. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And if you feel like supporting the channel further, my Patreon, merchandise, and Gamer Subs affiliate links are in the description. I would like to thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you next time in the Den of the Drake.
Ah, my foolish minions, I mean noble patrons. When my schemes bear fruit, only the highest tier patrons will be spared my chromatic wrath. Patrons like Dracor, Karam Archivals, Cam the Badger, Rotator Tot, Soul Taker 666212, Gobshite, Ziggy Diggy 00, Neridelbel, Curistor, Miramotau, and Matthew Mulqueenie. The dawn of my reign is at hand. As soon as I figure out what the hell a Bitcoin is, I'll be the richest dragon who has ever lived.
Hey, if you're still here, YouTube thinks you would like this video. So, are you gonna click it or am I gonna have to come over there?